Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Guild Wars 2 podcast, the LightBringers episode 7. We're talking about Path of Fire today. Hope everyone is well. We have guests here as well. We have Bird of Chess, Kroof. We also have Boots, or World Vendors, or whatever else he wants to call himself, here with you. They can unmute and say hello.
Oh, good. Hi.
Oh, hey everybody. It's wonderful being here.
An extreme amount of random banter before we started this podcast today, which is fine. It's just fine. It's been good times. I'm glad of it. Shall I tell you what? Nowadays, I am glad for the conversation with people.
Did you just one more thing? I heard Bird of Chess. I heard Rook. I heard Boots. World of Enders. Did you say the last one?
I said Kroof.
Okay.
Huh?
Yeah, I said Kroof really loudly,
Oh.
and I went Kroof.
Oh, don't worry. I would have corrected him immediately if
Yeah.
I did not hear my name.
Okay, good.
Yep, immediately.
Excuse me, I'm here too.
Oh, I'm here as well. I am Jebro. I'm the
I
host
just,
of
I
the show.
just shut up.
Oh,
as soon as I
no,
heard my name.
I kind of put this soiree on every so often. These are going to be more frequent as well as we kind of ramp up a little bit more towards hopefully an expansion next year. Not too sure when. I'm going to say Q4 next year. Q3. Maybe September. Not sure. But otherwise, let's do a quick intro. Bird of Chess, who are you? What do you do? Where do you do it? And do you like an apple after 10 a.m.?
Oh, I love an apple, but also it makes me sad inside. So thanks for that. Thanks. No, but you can usually find me. I'm a variety MMO broadcaster. I love some Final Fantasy XIV and Guild Wars 2, but I also do a bit of other things as far as indie games, RPGs, JRPGs. We've been doing some Baldur's Gate 3 and those sorts of things, right? But apples are delicious. I didn't much care for them until Tybalt, and now, as I said, there's some sadness. You can find me over on twitch.tv Bird of Chess. You can also find me at Bird of Chess on Twitter, and then on YouTube now, which has been something new for the past month or so. We have been doing some stuff there as well, Bird of Chess. So yes, I'm about. I fly about to different places, and we're always happy to see new people, welcome people in, and get people going with all kinds of content in the game, including raids and other community events.
Boom. There you go. New YouTube channel. Congrats on that.
Thanks, it's been fun.
Yeah. It's definitely a Twitch thing. You see on Twitter anyone giving advice, have a YouTube channel is the thing.
YouTube's good.
This is true.
Speaking of YouTube,
Speaking of YouTube.
that's all I do.
That's
Yeah.
there you go. Well, we'll go to Boots next then, I guess.
Smooth transition.
Hello, Boots. How are you doing? What do you do? Where do you do it? Where do you come from? Do you like chicken nuggets?
Sure. Yeah, chicken nuggets are good. They also make me sad inside, but for different reasons. After I eat the McDonald's ones, usually I feel sad inside. But yeah, I'm Boots. You can find me at World of Enders on YouTube. I make mostly build videos, but also random Guild Wars 2 videos that are just for fun sometimes. And also you can find me over on other people's channels, because I think I do more stuff on other people's channels than I do my own sometimes. But yeah, that's me.
Okay. Awesomeness. Yes, Boots is around everywhere. If you don't know Boots, go and look at some online. I don't know. World of Enders Boots GW2. Put the GW2 in, otherwise just get pictures of Boots. I mean, I don't know if it's pictures of you
Well,
specifically.
the thing is, the you misspelled my name. It's with 2 T's.
Oh crap! Did I?
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
Wow.
I'm bad.
I noticed you misspelled your own name too. It's Jebro, right? I thought it was Jebro.
Jebro.
No?
Jebro.
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 Je ne sais quoi.
Jebro Unity.
That's it. French.
Which is a Welsh
Undercurrent.
swear word.
What?
We've really brought it full circle
We did
here.
bring it
Wow.
full circle,
Yeah.
that's true.
Amazing.
The circle of life. I don't know.
And now we're
if that's a
talking
song.
about Kroof's Circle of Life, because that's something to talk about. Kroof, hello. What do you do? Where do you do it? How are you? And do you
Hello.
like candy floss?
Do you mean cotton candy? I think there's a bit of a language barrier here. But
No.
hi everyone. My
That's
name
what
is
we call
Kroof.
it though. Sorry.
How dare you interrupt me? My name is Kroof. I mean, not legally, but it's my chosen internet name. My parents would have been high on acid if they named me that. But I do a lot of YouTube stuff, and I stream occasionally on Twitch, do a lot of build videos, fan elite specializations, and sometimes story stuff. But wonderful to be here with everyone.
Oh, this
Hi.
is the best intro I've ever done.
Yeah.
Basically. Okay. To get us in the mood.
Nailed it.
Yes, definitely. That something happened. To get us in the video, I'm gonna in the video to get us in the mood. I'm gonna show you the Path of Fire launch trailer. I don't know if you guys want to watch the stream. You are welcome to, but you'll probably hear the sound as well coming through your headphones. But this is just like 2 minutes long. I thought it'd be good to get us in the mood. Okay.
Okay, are we allowed to live comment over it?
Should I pour myself a glass of wine to like really get in the mood with the Path of
Yeah.
Fire?
I mean,
Yeah.
you can comment over it if you want.
We a
I don't
group of
mind.
people who talk during movies, because I kind of do.
I sort of do too.
It depends how much I like the movie.
Even if it's a bad movie, I'll rip it to
No,
shreds.
no, especially if it's a bad movie. But if it's a movie I like,
Against a god of war.
Ooh, jackals.
A jackal though.
You guys can definitely see
yeah.
it. Yeah, so this was like the first kind of. I think this was like one of the first. Or was this the launch video when it actually came out? Because they didn't.
I don't know. Did we get teasers of mounts before this?
We definitely knew about mounts before.
And this
There was a massive leak 2 years before.
Oh
this.
yeah,
yeah.
there was.
What?
What in the MMO community leaks? No way.
Oh, novel concept.
But
But
it
this
wasn't-
trailer, I think, was the launch trailer.
It wasn't
This was one of the
actually
first ones.
like data mining though, was it? It was like from inside, from like testers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An email or something leaked, and Reddit got a hold of it. I remember that day fondly.
Yeah.
Finally.
Balthazar does look
No.
very intense in this trailer. Some strong like Kratos energy going.
Yeah.
That's true.
And we love that pixelated wheatgrass. It's nice.
Is this pre Kratos?
This
In,
music is
obviously not
hype as well.
The original Kratos.
I remember this. This like, music gives me life. Listen to this fucking
Oh,
music.
the music is so good.
yeah.
Can we
Path of
talk
Fire's
about
music.
that in this segment?
Who's that? Oh, I
The
missed
face.
it. But yeah,
Oh, so
it
good.
was good. It was good. It was good.
I also super love that the sort of like player character that they feature, you know, definitely looks like, you know, showcases some of the new character creator options that they put in for like people in the region and like for diversity, and like it's just nice to see that, you know, like
It's
so many
representative.
times you get an MMO trailer and it's like some white bread man who just looks like a
Yep.
graham cracker in human form.
I know what you mean though. I know what you mean.
110%.
Superhero in Japan.
Representation.
Wonder Bread. God.
Representation is important, especially with where, with where we're
Oh,
where
yeah.
we're going. Like, you know, that is important. You make a good point, and that's something we've been talking about as well, especially as I've been dipping into World of Warcraft recently, and that's been a hot topic recently. So yeah, it's different. It's important, and we can maybe delve into that kind of stuff if it comes up as well. But it is important. Representation in video games, conversations, have them. Okay. Intro to Path of Fire. So what we're going to sort of talk about. So Path of Fire was 2017. That is 3 years ago. November? No. Was it November? Was it September? I would say it was November.
Who did their homework?
It was something was it the 17th?
It was the 17th of
September.
Of a specific month.
September.
Yeah.
I think it was September.
I'm gonna
September
double check.
22nd, 2017.
Wow.
Never
we've
mind.
got
I
all
got the
things
September
right.
right.
Do
I
you
think-
remember the 21st night of September though? I think that was the night before it came out.
No.
Probably was. Yeah.
Did something happen then?
Yeah.
I don't know. Do you remember?
Do you remember?
The
The 21st night of
Do you
September.
remember?
Yeah.
Is that what we're doing? Like a reference to the
I'm
song?
trying to. I was hoping someone would pick it up. All right.
Don't worry, I got you. I got you.
We got there
Got your back,
eventually.
dude.
Thank you.
Okay, so what I'm going to talk about first is going to be Intro to Path of Fire, which was very good, personally. So what happened was, I wish I should have had some footage, actually. It was probably better than I don't know whether or not to talk about the marketing of this first or not. We can talk about that later. We'll start for the positives.
Oh.
A little bit of a spoiler there for my conversation. But Path of Fire intro, do you guys remember the intro when you came into Path of Fire? Do you remember what happened?
On the ship, and you go across and you see some... Or before that, before the ship, when you talk to Ellen Keel in the...
I'm specifically talking about the ship.
Yeah.
So you come into the first map, and I was hoping that I was going to be able to find a video of it, but I couldn't find one in time, and I don't have my footage anyway, which is unfortunate. But you come in on the ship, on the... Good lord, what are they called? I can't remember. I'm going to call it an airship.
Airship?
Yeah,
Airship?
Yeah.
Airship?
No, that's fine. And you see the pyramids, and you see like the area for the first time. The music's good, things are moving, and you get to the desert, and you're like, "Damn, I'm in the desert." In Guild Wars 2, which isn't really a thing we've had before, like that kind of biome. And then we've got, the start of it, and that shit, that beginning was pretty hype. I mean, I thought that was quite good compared to like Heart of Thorns. I don't really remember Heart of Thorns entrance as well. It was still pretty good because the airship, like, people had crash landed. You just come out of the previous zone, because you started there, didn't you? You started in the previous zone.
Yeah. So we got the intro, I guess, to Heart of Thorns at the end of this Living World season 2, was it?
Yeah.
We got the cinematic, but in terms of the in-game stuff, that was when we were in the Silver Waste.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just walked through the door. I guess it's nice in its own way, though. You kind of go off onto this cliff, and you get to sort of see how vertical everything is right at once. So that's nice, but definitely different in Path of Fire. It's more cinematic entrance.
Yes, it feels like it hits you more with a bang, as opposed to like Heart of Thorns, which is kind of like a gradual, like working in through the story, and then you get there. And I remember even that first kind of mission, or like that first moment, even feeling a little bit short, because you get through it and you're like, oh wait, now I guess we're gonna wander around and try and figure out where we are or what happened. Whereas Path of Fire definitely felt very much like, here is the thing, and it was fanfare and very, very dramatic as you kind of like approach cinematically.
It was more like a AAA intro to a game, I guess, in my opinion.
They definitely like the pyramid crumbling down as you pass by it.
Oh yeah,
that was something that you haven't seen in Guild Wars 2 before, at least. That was pretty nice.
Yeah, that was good. They didn't do much more of that, actually. It reminds me of Elder Scrolls Online and how they do their story sometimes with different camera angles and stuff, and you move your perspective to see different things which kind of occurring. That was kind of what they did.
I think it's because that animation probably was like built unique for that thing, and was probably a little intense to do, because I don't think the game engine is able to do that naturally.
No.
Maybe, but it did like go straight into. Actually, no, it wasn't instance, was it? Because that happened, and then you went into the game and you were just there, right? I mean, people were loading in. I'm pretty sure, like it was the actual map. It wasn't like an instance, or was it? I can't even remember.
It was an instance, yeah, and that's when you, very nicely get your first map.
The first,
right in the first,
and that was the first instance, right? It's been 3 years. I haven't played it since, and I completely forgot. I did.
I play the story constantly.
I could give you the exact rundown, because I think I've done this 5 or 6 times at least to get my friends into it to get the mounts.
Damn.
So you arrive on the ship, drop down into the first pyramid, and then there is that lady who, spoilers, is actually somebody from Guild Wars 1.
Can you say spoilers after 3 years? I mean, it's just
spoilers.
We're talking about that. You can say names. If you want. I don't know their name. I mean, if you know their name, then cool. You can do that.
So yeah, you go fight her. She's the Herald of Balthazar. She runs off after killing some people. I think you could save the people, but maybe not all the people if you're good. She runs off. You chase her through fire. You help out some villagers and get a raptor, and then chase her some more, and then you end up in Amnoon Oasis. And that's it.
Which is a nice place.
Pretty much the general flow.
Yeah. It was. I did like the first. I guess. What do you guys feel like in terms of just entering? I guess the desert. Then is that quite a cool biome? Is it quite cool? Like the first map, and you like get there for the first time. You're like, oh.
I actually think that the desert biomes in Guild Wars 2 are, and we'll talk about this more with maps later too, but like I think they are some of my absolute favorite desert regions that have been realized in a game. Just because like I've been in so many other games where you get to the desert and it's like sand, red sandstone, sand everywhere, more sand, sky sort of sand colored, like, and it drives me insane because I'm like, there's so many different ways that you can make these environments rich and beautiful, and like the architecture in these zones is stunning. The colors that they use, even for like the tile work, the way that like the day and night can like affect how the desert looks is so beautiful. The colors, like, it was one of the first times that I've actually been in like a desert environment and felt that it felt just as rich as like the culture and people and world and everything that like a fantasy game could offer you, just set in a desert. And it didn't feel repetitive. It didn't feel like sand everywhere. Anakin Skywalker displeasure intensifies. Like, it felt really visually beautiful, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, they have a way of doing that, don't they? Heart of Thorns, it's like 4 maps.
ArenaNet, we make sand really well.
Well, not just sand. I'm just saying, because like
each individual grain has so
Heart
much
of Thorns
love.
was the jungle expansion.
Yes.
And Path of Fires was the desert expansion. And just the fact that you're able to make 4 maps of jungle feel different. I gotta be honest, I think 4 maps you start to like feel like, okay, this is enough jungle. but
it's a variety
they definitely made each one feel different. And for the desert, same thing. They have a good way of making the maps feel different, even if it's desert or jungle.
I mean, maybe we just have the maps convo now. It might be easier. Screw it.
One thing that I kind of, in the introduction to the maps, I kind of wanted like an on-foot adventure. I'm always kind of displeased with how sometimes they'll be like, oh, you get portals over here or you get airshipped over here. I much prefer like, I understand the world of Guild Wars 2 and its technological advancements than Guild Wars 1.
Yeah.
But I still very much enjoy that like old fantasy trope adventure where you don't have this technology and you have to kind of brave the
walking is a very 80s thing, Kroof. Like,
it is.
Very 80s.
I mean, now everybody just segues all over the place. So, but
can you imagine in Guild Wars 2? Britlock just comes in on a segue.
I mean, they do segue like figuratively through stories.
I guess it's true.
I would lose my mind if Ritlock like rode up on a Segway and was like, "Hey guys, you seen Tahathin? No, right?" And then just like, it would be so
I came
good.
from the mists.
So for my point, it's not a major point, but I still would have loved to have gone through that like gate near Ebon Hawk and kind of venture that way.
Yeah, we still can't get through that gate.
We still cannot. But
I mean,
overall, it was fine. Yeah.
It brings up a good point though, Kroof, because I was actually thinking with this too, that just like Boots was saying, the fact that first mount is literally in that first instance, on one hand, it's like, great, everybody wanted mounts, everybody's losing their mind. I mean, no, I do not want to have to do like a long, stupid grind like you know, had to in WoW for so long to get flying unlocked or to get this thing unlocked or to get, you know, I wanted to be able to experience it, but at the same time, it does create this like weird dilemma of like, I mean, again, you don't really necessarily have to go out on foot, and people will just skip the story to get that first mount because they're like, oh, it's super easy to do this. So even if it spoils me in some way a little bit, I'm just going to get this quest done and I'm just going to get the mount. So it's like, it has good and bad to it because on one hand, I do think it's more convenient and people obviously do it. But on the other hand, I'm like, it does kind of take a little bit of that on foot exploration step out of the way.
So you're thinking of
still going around.
So you're thinking of for like new players in the game who haven't necessarily done Heart of Thorns yet or done all the way up to level 80. Well, they have to have done 80, but like the entire core story as well.
Yeah, so many people skip. Like,
Yeah.
I even myself, when I came in right after Path of Fire release, like a little bit, like right after that. And when I was going through stuff, even, I guess just a handful of months, after, we kind of gotten into a bit of like the patch cycle post release, I had people just like coming in like, why are you doing stuff on foot in Heart of Thorns? Why, you could just skip. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing? And I was like, because I'm a
masochist.
Yeah, well, I was like, one, because I love suffering, and two, because I actually kind of want to experience these maps like they wanted me to, and the story like they wanted me to, and that's just sort of the player that I am. And it's not a bad thing to have that convenience, because some people do, and those maps in Heart of Thorns are arduous. So having the mount can make it much easier, especially now without so many people being in there exploring alongside you right off the bat. But like, it was interesting to me that it kind of put this like weird pressure, I think, on the community to like, it's nonsensical for you to experience Heart of Thorns now, just kind of on foot without getting that mount.
I see what you're saying, but I feel like if a player feels like they shouldn't play it the way you're not supposed to play it, then they'll not do it, like you did. But I understand like getting pressure from the community to do it is a little annoying.
Well, they might play it out of order as well, depending if they got a boost and know everything else. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know. I need to use my player boost and actually check like where you end up.
But to be honest, though, I think that it needed to be in the first instant the Raptor mount because of the fact that all the maps are designed for mounts.
You can hire mounts as well, right, in different places.
That's true. Yeah. I mean, they definitely were designed for it. So having that is, I think, a way for you to explore more as opposed to, like limiting you a bunch.
Yeah, imagine if you didn't get the Raptor mount in the first instance and you had to do the entire first map, that gigantic map, on foot before getting your mount in the second map.
You have to get it because you got the race in the city, and that's like the first thing I did. So.
Yeah, but
I can't imagine running that race would be quite annoying.
There are certain things in previous maps that you could only get or do with like the skimmer or the like they designed the maps to have blocked areas.
There was story progression was you had to do because there's bits where a skimmer where you can only get across. Like in one of the maps, you have to have one. I'm pretty sure, and you have to use.
I wouldn't have minded if they didn't do it the first instance, though. I felt like they could have maybe like done it second or third instance, just to maybe like. Yeah, just to maybe give you like that sense of like, oh, these places are really big. I need to use swiftness.
I think I know why though, Kroof. I think I know why, and we can do this now. We can talk about mounts, and we'll talk about maps as we talk about mounts because that was the main feature of the expansion. Like the expansion, yeah, cool. We're going to Crystal Desert. That's cool. We've got new elite specializations. We've gone to new areas. We've gotten new elite specializations before. We've done masteries before. But now you got mounts. Mounts is the thing. And back in the day, mounts, we're not going to have mounts in Guild Wars 2. No. It was always like, we don't think so. I think there was certain devs that even said, just no. We're probably not going to have them just because of the way we want people to experience the world. Then we got gliders and we're like, oh, that's cool. And then they're pretty good. And then we're like, fuck it. Let's just go for, wow, I suck at swearing. And then just go for mounts. But as we know, because especially as we know of combat, which is not very similar to any other MMO we know, other than maybe ESO, I guess. They went for it. They just fought script.
And they went all in, though, right?
Oh, God. All in and half a biscuit tin later, yeah.
I mean, it is unique that the mounts in Guild Wars 2 really do have their own progression, right? I mean, I can kind of think of two things off of that. One being that in Heart of Thorns, I think the design mentality was very different, right? Like the masteries and things that you had to unlock to navigate the terrain as easily as possible, including glider, but then also everything from like, the toxin resistance and all of that kind of stuff.
But they did the same thing. in Path of Fire, the mounts were the things that you had to upgrade
Yes.
in order to get around the maps.
But I think that they kind of made you feel the pain of not having them more in Heart of Thorns.
Oh yeah,
So that it was
absolutely.
really something that like you had to long-term work for. Whereas in like Path of Fire, and I would be interested if this actually weighed into the decision, they do kind of lead up front with that more, but then like mastering those mounts and really being able to navigate super efficiently takes time. But it's not like it's this long thing where right at the end you get all the abilities that make it really easy, right? Like you get the first mount, and then like over the progression of things, you do get other mounts interspersed that make other trains easier or upgrade, culminating in that sort of Griffin mount. So there is a progression there. It maybe I would be curious if it was like a direct response almost to the pacing of Heart of Thorns if players found that frustrating. But yeah, it's not often that sometimes like you see in an MMO that big feature, that thing that players would have to like grind for or work for just in the first instance, like right there, here you go, have one. But I think it did showcase some of the really unique things about mounts right off the bat, because we knew that like they weren't just going to be mounts that we unlocked, they were going to be really unique modes of transportation that changed how maps were designed. So
Yeah, you can kind of see that as well.
That's it. That's the big thing, that it both changed how maps were designed, but also very strongly influenced the gameplay of Path of Fire. And the design of the maps is essentially the gameplay of non-instance content in Path of Fire. And the mounts are ingrained in these maps. Like there are sections you can't get to without the Springer. There are sections you can't get to without the level 3 Raptor. There are sections you can't get to without the Jackal. There's a very large similarity between the way they designed Heart of Thorn maps, like you were saying, to the way they designed Path of Fire maps, but I think they made it both easier and more fun to upgrade your mounts in Path of Fire to do the things in the Path of Fire maps than they did in Heart of Thorns.
It was, and they continue to do that. Like you're talking about, you know, the maps being like mounts being able to access different things, because they continued that onward past Path of Fire into Living Story. So we obviously got, at the end of things, you've got like when you get to the end of the game, pretty much, I mean, you're going for like the Griffin, which was, you know, not 100% necessary.
It was a secret.
And it was a secret. It was a massive secret. Like no one knew until like, I mean, it was a week or so after, maybe. I don't know. I can't remember. Yeah. But even now, like with the roller beetle, there's still like some extra bits and bobs that you can get access to. And obviously the Skyscale of Doom. I mean joy. It's just the Skyscale. It's not called of Doom or upsettedness. It's
I love the Skyscale.
I mean, I love the mount. It's just I'm not going to talk about how you get it. Because
it was fine. It was easy.
I guess it does technically still kind of count in semi Path of Fire content, right? I mean, it is interesting to me that we have the Griffin and the Skyscale, and that each of them really do offer a different, I guess, experience to unlock that kind of mobility, right? Like Griffin being kind of like story immersive, you spend more gold on it, and it doesn't take quite as much of your existence out of you. Skyscale obviously being a far longer grind. I mean, now with the additional maps and things that we've gotten heading into season 5, it has made it much easier, but it is still like, it is a big old grind. And there were a few parts of that, like the loops you do around that map 100 times, where I was like, I don't need to give medicine or find the eggies anymore. I'm so tired. Please let me be done with this. But I mean, it doesn't cost you as much gold. So it's like letting players, I think, have a different way to kind of engage or choose to unlock that. But I was surprised that the Skyscale did not negate for me my use of the Griffin. Because that was my big worry. I don't know if anybody else was worried about that.
No,
like,
I still use it.
I don't think so. It's too slow, right? It's
Skyscale is like about the sky, like going up into the sky, like literally. And then Griffin is like about going fast.
That I don't actually use the Griffin nearly as much as I did. I very rarely use it at all, actually.
Wow.
Just because
Griffin
granted, the Griffin is much faster. But there's also an element of fault where you could mess it up and hit the floor. And sometimes I'll use it if I want to get across map really fast and I happen to be up high. But most of the time, I don't use the Griffin at all anymore
Hmm.
because I find the Skyscale to just be more of a leisurely,
Yes.
easy time
I-
to pass through things.
Right, how do
I
you
would
say
say
leisure?
enemy.
How do you say leisure? Sorry? Leisure?
Leisurely,
Is that
The
an
way you just
American
said it.
way? Do you all say it that way?
People
leisure,
say
I say
leisure or leisure. Leisure.
leisure.
Yeah.
It's not leisure.
It can be leisure if
Actually, I
you
do
want
s-
it to.
I actually do say
Schedule,
leisure.
rough.
It is leisure.
Schedule Z.
What?
So I
What's
would
with
say, yeah.
Z?
We do say leisure, yes.
I
Mostly.
would,
Okay, I'm
I would
scared.
say that the
Sorry.
Skyscale is probably ArenaNet's answer to people who felt like the game didn't have a more traditional flying mount, I guess. Because the Griffin is different from every other flying mount in any other MMO, for sure.
Yeah.
Super fun. Love the Griffin. But probably there are some people who didn't like it because it was harder to control. So Skyscale is just, you're straight up. You get to hover. You get to fly up if you want to. You get to fly down. Everything a little bit slowly, but it's nice to get around a map more tactically, I guess. So
I mean, I am also going to say from a non-mechanical standpoint at all, having a dragon mount in a game in which dragons are so heavily featured is fantastic.
it is nice, yes.
Oh, people were not happy about that.
But is it really a dragon?
They were like, "We're trying to kill these dragons. They're really rare creatures." And then they're like, "But now we can ride them, and they're everywhere." I'm like, "Dude, this is not the same dragon. Calm the."
No, they're
down.
I mean they're different entities. You can have, winged reptilian creatures but I mean it also opened up the door for me to eventually one day get like a juvenile arena skin for it, which I very much appreciate and would love. So ArenaNet, just a heads up.
Uh-oh. Some
But,
people wouldn't be
I
happy.
mean,
Wait, okay.
It is interesting to me, I guess, overall. I mean, whether or not you use each of the like Griffin versus Skyscale, right? I think that is going to really depend on who you are as a player. I just
you say who
recently
you are as a person as well. Well,
yeah,
what kind of person is going to do that? I mean, yeah, I guess.
you might enjoy, I think, more of the kind of finesse element with Griffin, which I really only started getting into myself semi recently by doing all the Griffin sort of courses, which are super difficult and fun and interesting. And like Skyscale does give you, I think, a more reliable kind of flight experience, but
Reliable, yes.
it is amazing to me how dynamic Griffin can be if you use it, and like that momentum can be fun and rewarding in and of itself.
Mm.
But even with those two aside, like I've seen in chat people saying, like Springer Mount is completely dead. This thing, is completely dead. But like personally, I still use a lot of those mounts. Like even if I'm just landing on something and I'm like, well, I just need to get to this ledge and it's like 2 feet, I'll maybe like throw on my Springer and jump up. Skimmer was probably my least used until we got the underwater sort of update, which has been great.
Mm.
I mean, it's really interesting to me that this could have been something that was introduced, this unique mount mobility system, right? That was introduced, and then, like everybody's saying, truly was just like everything was dead once you got, X, Y, or Z. But the fact that they've continued to develop content like the Jackal puzzles and, even the roller beetle races and like these different things that give you content with those mounts is super fun and forward thinking. And I think it really helps them shine.
Mm-hmm.
I always forget about the roller beetle.
What do you mean you forget about the roller beetle? It's the best mount.
Forget about the roller beetle,
gosh.
okay? It's just like,
The roller beetle is the best.
I'm bad at
Roller
drifting.
beetle.
I'm
I'm bad at it.
I'm actually okay
Drifting
using
is
it,
cool.
but I only really started to appreciate it once they updated the roller beetle to where it gave you the full endurance bar right off the
I
bat.
see.
Because
Yeah.
you used to have to wait like 5-10 seconds for it to fully charge. And then even then it's that even more risk reward, which I actually really like with the mounts. I do still very much appreciate the Griffin. But I've really began to love it more since those updates. The roller beetle, that is.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's
It's the
because
best
they've
mount, though.
actually pulled these like mounts into. They've not forgotten about them, which I think is the most important thing. And I still don't think they've forgotten about gliding either.
I think
Obviously, from like I mean, we're talking about gliding and talking about half ones, but like, obviously the skins, like the mounts had several different feat aims, I guess, or goals, or benefits for ArenaNet and the players. Like, completely different way of experiencing map content. Going back to a more, so if we're introducing maps into this conversation as well, which we're going to do, going for a more flat one leveled or maybe even two maximum, I guess, leveled maps rather than going into these deep vertical spaces like, you know, maybe Heart of Thorns was kind of about. Don't have nightmares, it's okay. You know, if you're going to have flat land and you're just going to have more area, like a bigger area to explore, like making that more interesting via mounts is a good way of doing it. You know, it was very much linked to that, I feel, because gliders, you know, we needed that for the verticality that you had with Heart of Thorns. I think it's very intentional, obviously. And then going for mounts, you know, you can take on more land, you can get across places quicker, you got less waypoints. You've got, I think, do you have less waypoints? I think you have less waypoints in Path of Fire than you do in Heart of Thorns as well. As far as I remember, I think so.
It feels like it to me, to be honest. I don't know. I mean,
It feels kind of the same.
Like
That's kind of one thing that I was
to
really I paid attention to a lot early on in Path of Fire. I've since completely forgotten about it, but I was really for like I wanted them to only add like 2 waypoints per map to really give the mount some like extra oomph and to maybe compel people to explore the maps.
Yeah.
But ultimately, it still felt pretty well populated.
So
Other than
Oh,
the
yeah.
Ellen Riverlands, that only had 3 waypoints.
I think both Path of Fire maps and Heart of Thorn maps both have far less than core Tyria map.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Definitely that.
But the difference, I guess, between Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, how they deal with just having mounts, is that the maps in Path of Fire are just like 3 times as big.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
So you'll have the same amount of waypoints, but they're 3 times further away than normal.
I think the waypoints were on different levels on Heart of Thorns as well. Like there was like,
that's
the
true.
different technical levels,
yeah.
which was a little bit more difficult to walk around. Verdant was okay.
I did like that. I think a lot of, and I heard a lot of people, kind of mention that they felt like some of the balance between Heart of Thorns, which many players found too punishing, very frustrating, very difficult, hard if you didn't have a group or, you just didn't know quite what was happening. Like getting into Path of Fire, I've heard a lot of people mention that like, some people really liked that shift to like, oh, the maps maybe now are a little bit less like super stacked and super confusing, and how do I get to this one thing, I have no idea. And less maybe deadly in most but not all areas. I mean, there are definitely some areas that are still challenging, and then I also had heard a lot of people who didn't necessarily like that, like they wished that it was more complex, they wished that it was still an open world that was really punishing and challenging. So I've been really glad, I think, to see that even if like Path of Fire itself with the map set that we got was maybe a little bit more straightforward, with some of the maps that we've been getting since in the Living Seasons, I mean, even like Dragonfall, I can think, has a ton of verticality. Like there's so much, there were cliffs I'd like walk up to the bottom of, I'm like, you guys to be kidding me, come on. Like, I can't go up there until I get the Skyscale, right? Great, well, fine, I guess I'll just sit down here and die. Like, it was funny to me that it had been so long since I felt like that, but even getting like that to now, our newer maps where we have this kind of world versus world element where there is like maybe a waypoint, and then if we unlock other stuff, you can then go around to the different encampments or so, I think we're seeing them kind of experiment with pushing again what they want to do with that, which is exciting to me because I do like a balance, and I do think it makes some of the mounts like springers or gliders and stuff like that maybe have a bit of a stronger place versus like the flat maps. But even those still had some interesting little areas,
Yeah, I agree. I think that the maps were designed for their time, and they've progressed a little bit past that now, like you said, with more interesting design. And on the side, we also have new mounts since Path of Fire, and yeah, they're just. It makes me wonder about the next expansion. I don't know if we're allowed to talk about the next expansion on this Path of Fire podcast.
No.
I mean, we can dip in like a tiny bit, but there's a lot of Path of Fire to talk about. I was gonna have a full on like I'm gonna have a few podcasts about the next expansion before there's even any news about it. So it's but like I mean, there is that, like, you've had gliders, you've had mounts, and then the next thing we can talk about that. Yeah, maybe another time. But it does make you think about where they would kind of go to next, and that is true. But there is a lot more to talk about, and I think there's probably even more stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does make you think about that. But they've already kind of, and to be fair, no, it is kind of linked because they've done the skimmer. We're going to water. We're going. They've already kind of introduced us into
Yeah,
there's
so we
gonna be
already
some
have
more
that
stuff.
raptor mount, so we don't need to get a different one in the first instance of the next expansion.
Yeah.
Because we have that underwater intro mount with the skimmer that we already have. Although, I guess that means that when they sell the next expansion, they're going to bundle Path of Fire in it? Probably.
Well, they'll just do. I mean, they have to.
Yeah.
Unless you do
they
get
didn't do
it
that.
early.
They didn't do that for Path of Fire. You were able to buy them separately back then.
But the thing is
Yeah.
now if they are linked, like you say, that's the thing, isn't it? Like, how are they going to do that? Are they going to give? But the thing is, again, you can just hire these. They've just put mounts out to hire. You
So
haven't
yeah, when
needed to
Path of
have
Fire
those.
was coming out, I actually argued for the way they did it in the end, that you could buy Path of Fire separately from Heart of Thorns, or you could buy them as a combo, which
You
is
have
what they
to
did.
do that. Yeah, you have to do that.
And because because earlier on, before Heart of Thorns, they redesigned the whole trait system. They redesigned everything to make things able to be separated out between expansions. And so I was like, if they're designing it that way, they might as well, or they should make them able to be standing up independently. But I think by now in the game's lifetime, we've kind of progressed past that as well. And I feel like now, if they do a new expansion, they might as well just stuff everything else into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I mean,
I
there'll
think
be one.
too.
There'll be one.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jeb.
No, there'll be like it's just a quick blip. There'll be like it's weird because when you're talking about that, I was like, because I literally started playing World of Warcraft on stream last night, and Battle for Azeroth is the latest expansion before Shadowlands, which is coming out. It's been a long time since I played that, and I was like, they've got a whole new player experience. Battle for Azeroth is like, how many expansions later? So many. And you play to level 10 in the new experience, like in a new instance, a new designed area, and then you go straight into BFA, which is the latest expansion. And they're just like, and if you've got higher level characters and stuff, you can go into whatever expansion you want to go into. So there is ways that they can do that. Like maybe even Guild Wars 2 can think about doing that and bringing them into the content straight away. And they've kind of got that with the level boost, I guess. I feel like Bird of Chest is going to say something relevant.
Oh, I do
here.
have some thoughts, but
You're always going to say something relevant. Sorry, that sounded rude. Like,
No.
to what I'm talking
No,
about
I mean,
specifically.
you knew they were coming. I think it's different design mentalities, right?
Yeah.
So there are like two major sort of design mentalities that we've seen as far as tackling story or narrative in MMOs. And this is just from my own personal experience and observation, right? There is the sort of like each thing is standalone, where, each of the different expansions features its own narrative arc, which pretty much any player who can come into it will be able to understand the heroic struggle. You'll be able to get the full experience, and it will be like a campaign in and of itself. Also kind of similar to like Guild Wars 1, where all of the different expansions and sort of campaigns were their own thing that you could or couldn't have, and you can make a new character or things like that for them, right? And then there is a subsect of MMOs that more recently has kind of tried to go almost back to more of that single player experience. And 14, and I think Guild Wars 2, the way that it kind of is now, have gone for that mentality of, well, if we have a game that we can develop for years, we can tell a story, a linear story of a scale that a single player experience will never be able to.
Yeah.
And we can like immerse players in years of narrative that build up their relationship with the world and the characters in a linear way. That has its own pros and cons, because like you said, people can't always just jump straight in and just understand what's happening. But kind of like in 14, Shadowbringers was just lauded for its storytelling, but its storytelling was based off of a story premise that was built in the core game in optional side content.
Oh no.
So it's something that I think MMO developers just didn't assume or ever think that players would want, but it can pay off. And I think we've seen with Guild Wars 2's development that they've moved more and more to the idea of a linear narrative and the power that that journey can hold. So I would be super surprised if they let you skip. Like, that's the main essence.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be super surprised
Yeah.
if they were just like, yeah, you can blast through whatever and just go to the newest expansion. You don't need to know who Arena is. That's fine. Balthazar, he's smelly. You don't need to care about him. And
Elder
You don't have
Scrolls
Damn.
Online does it though. Elder Scrolls Online does it, then don't they? Like one Tamriel is like a big thing where you start off. If you're a new player, you have no choice. You are going into Greymoor. You are going into Western Skyrim, and you are gonna go and do that. You're gonna go do that first starter quest and first intro to the game, which is not too bad. And then then you can go wherever you want. It doesn't matter. Like, it's truly open in that way. But the thing is that, and now World of Warcraft has this as well, is that these areas scale to the player. And Guild Wars 2 is going to slowly be one of the more current MMOs. I can't remember if this is the truth in Final Fantasy 14. So I think Bird of Cheshire, you probably play this the most out of us. I don't know about Boots and anyone else, but like, the world scales to you in Guild Wars 2, and sorry, not in Guild Wars 2. In if you go backwards, it doesn't. If you go upwards, although it does, doesn't it? Actually, can you whip mentors? Can you actually in Guild Wars 2? Can you get mentored up? Like,
No, you can't upscale
can't.
someone. That was
Well,
their initial idea, but then they
World.
scrapped it. Other than World versus World, but no one cares. Who cares about
yeah,
that?
see, World v World
Whoa.
and PvP. Yeah.
Controversial.
you can technically go to zones you haven't been to. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you will die a lot, like, but you
Yeah.
can teleport a friend or move. It doesn't scale as flexibly as ESO, which is one thing that I love about ESOs, like, from an exploration zone standpoint, like the fact that it is more modular, so each map is its own narrative and you can travel freely once you kind of get through that initial thing, whatever they roll you into. I love that. 14 doesn't do that at all, and it's terrible. Like, I'll be real, it's a
Very
lot of like,
linear.
I love the older maps and I love but they have struggled with their like immersive map design in many ways. So like, yeah, if you go to a lower level zone, you're gonna blast everything. If you're low level, you can't go to any higher zones, but that's not really the experience that they designed.
Yeah.
So Guild Wars 2 is kind of a hybrid between where you have this
Mhm.
more linear story, but technically more freedom in the maps and world. Do you know what I mean?
Because you could go back to the core maps if you wanted to and experience them.
Yeah.
So that is a good question, because Sin of Anubis in chat brings up a question about that kind of. He's mentioning something that they kind of did in factions in Guild Wars 1,
Right.
when their first expansion after Prophecy, where what they did was when you could make a character in factions starting off as a level 1 character, and they kind of have like a newbie island storyline that loves you all the way up to level 20, which was the highest level back then. And then you move on to the main island and start
Oh, holy
the rest
crap.
campaign.
That's kind of what World of Warcraft was literally just done.
Right, like with
crazy, then.
Pandaria and stuff, right?
No,
Yeah,
literally just done. Literally just done. Like, they've literally just put in brand new player experience where you get literally trapped on an island.
So
So
That's
it's
what they
like,
do in
what
Guild
the hell?
Wars 1. That's what they did for both expansions in Guild Wars 1, but they did not do that for Guild Wars 2 in the first 2 expansions, at least. It's been linear, like Rook's been talking about.
I don't know if they
hate
can.
that. I don't like that. I mean, it's like we've
Yeah.
talked about when we like Tengu, for example, right? Like Tengu, because of their place in the world and stuff like that. If for some reason in the future we get a new race, yes, maybe you'd have to roll them in with some kind of optional little side thing to skip the personal story stuff. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
which I think is fine. But when I played WoW, that was one thing that I hated so much. Because it's like you have all these years of content and writing and story building,
Yeah.
but like rather than trying to make that story something and like that experience something that players still feel is worth going through and scales to them and is interesting, and like introduce ways that like dungeon sync is actually a real thing and not just like a random event that happens sometimes. Like, I stubbornly went through all of the expansions of WoW when I first played it because I wanted to know what was happening, and even then I still didn't always know what was happening.
No, it's a lot.
So like,
It's
to
a lot.
me, I just think that, especially for the longevity of an MMO, rushing players to new content isn't always the best strategy, because you do miss out on like monopolizing on the content and stuff that you already have that's there.
So
Yeah,
I
that's
would
true.
agree with you entirely. I think that is something that Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire lack. Especially Heart of Thorns, not so much, because I think in those 4 jungle things, it would probably be difficult to say there's an entire civilization. I guess you could make an Insel race, but you could make, there are people living in the desert. You could have done something like that, have somebody live their life with the reign of Kalawa Joko over him, and have a storyline and introduce people to the storyline that way. But especially with the new expansion in Kantha, you have an entire island that's been cut off from the civilization for 250 years, or 200 years. So like, there's so much story to tell there that it'll be probably difficult to tell it just by jumping you in as a level 80 character. You'd probably want to introduce people to it at level 1 and then work your way up, and maybe let people who have level 80 characters join into the story once they hit level 80. However, if they do that, they probably might as well make a new race, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't think that's ever really going to happen. I think the only time
Kroof
we're
just
gonna-
destroying Boots' dreams like within 2 seconds of
No.
finishing.
In terms of the
It's
race,
never
I
gonna
think that would
happen.
happen. I think there would be a wonderful idea for the race, but I think that they would have to implement Tengu or a dwarf or something, but it would have to be centralized.
Fuck yeah,
to-
dwarves. Sorry,
But
I'm
the
sorry,
only
Jen.
only dwarf remaining, right? The one
Wait, what?
dwarf who is alive.
You
could
can't
do
all be the
Jimmy
same
Reed
character.
story and be like the curse of the stone. Like,
Yeah,
there's
the
things,
magic
they
in this
make
world
up.
exists. You can reverse a curse, I think. I believe.
Yeah.
better
But
be able
I
to.
think the only time you would
God
see
damn.
that idea of a leveling island, I just don't think that's ever going to happen in modern day Guild Wars 2. But the only time that it could is if it was, say, the Tengu, where you level not from 1 to 80, but from 1 to 30. Because at 30, that's when the story becomes more or less universal. You pick an order, and then it becomes fairly
Yeah.
linear
Yeah.
in the sense. There's
would
not
be
going to
some-
necessarily be like an entire experience,
I mean,
unless
this-
they get rid of the whole entire importance of the core leveling experience and just have an island where you literally get like 10 levels every quest.
I think
because you
this
have to
is-
get to 80 somehow.
That's definitely questions for maybe the next expansion for sure. I think we'll
Yeah.
definitely
Okay,
talk about
yeah.
that.
We'll go-
Definitely, that's
forget it for now.
the next one. We're going off topic a little bit.
Path of Fire.
But like,
It
that's-
does art.
I think it's because
I
we're
think it's
talking
really
about that.
tie
right?
together, because like you were saying though,
Yeah.
people weren't totally sure how they were going to handle things, right? So Heart of Thorns to Path of Fire was a big deal, because like that kind of set the tone as to how like the living seasons between that even would tie in, what we would get as far as like linear stories or more sort of condensed stories. I mean, there's a big sort of, those first 3 expansions of any MMO, I think, really kind of show and or set the precedent for how content will develop in the future. So it is interesting to look at Path of Fire as the follow-up to Heart of Thorns, and then theorize about what we may see now that we're 2x packs in, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely. So Path of Fire was in a lot of ways a direct response to Heart of Thorns. It was, so they basically looked at all of the complaints that people had and the things that people said were good about Heart of Thorns, and said, okay, we're going to try to keep the things you guys liked about Heart of Thorns, but we are definitely going to go completely the other direction with all the complaints. So people said that it was too grindy and too difficult, so they tried to make it less grindy and less difficult. It's still difficult, like, mind you, it's still
And
more
now people
difficult
spend
than
less time
Corteria.
in Path of Fire maps than they do in Heart of Thorn maps.
I mean, it
That's
would
the
have been
problem.
difficult if they didn't blow the elite specs out of the ass, but
Blow the elite
Technical,
specs
whatever,
out, yeah,
Kroof.
yeah.
Kroof, what do
That's
you-
the real Firebringer right
That's
there.
true.
That's where it comes from.
That's true. But
Fire.
I do see in chat, and this is actually something that I would love to talk about. I think the big response or difference that I really felt between the two, because each one's its own different experience, right? I like them both for different reasons. But one thing that did feel very noticeably different between Heart of Thorns into Path of Fire, and that also kind of ties into like the map discussion that we were having, are metas, which I do have to say that like I love the Heart of Thorns metas. The last time I was on the cast, I raved about Dragon Stand. Like, I adore them. I'm so glad, Kroof, you feel the same. And I will say, I don't think that Path of Fire had as many memorable ones. Like, I mean,
No.
we've had some interesting ones as we've gone on in the living season, but like just Path of Fire itself is
That-
kind of cool.
yeah.
You get the Guild Wars 1 reference with
All
the
world bosses.
but yeah.
No
That
world
is for
bosses
sure the one. I think the biggest complaint people had with Path of Fire.
Mhm.
Maybe
Yeah, that was the
besides
biggest
not grinding
letdown.
enough.
I think in terms of maps, I think you kind of hit the nail on the head. It was not memorable, and there was no real sense of a meta, at least
There was
when
no-
compared
there
to
isn't-
Heart of Thorns.
There isn't big
Mm.
ones.
They were there, but they weren't like
They're not
weren't as
fu- it-
obvious or as like pushed in terms of like
And
Heart
the
of Thorns. I
rewards.
think that-
Well, it's the
and the rewards.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Eeh.
That's the thing though, because Heart of Thorns wasn't just about the mounts and everything else. It introduced legendary armor, which is one of the biggest reasons that people.
Yeah, but meta
started
events weren't
doing
really
this.
about legendary armor.
Are they? Well,
just had, like,
you have to
interesting
go.
skins.
You have to go to a lot of them to get the legendary armor and raiding, because raiding was in Heart of Thorns as well. And
Yeah,
you
but-
didn't get that in Path of Fire. I understand what you're saying, but like, there's
It's more so
many
added, yeah.
different. There's a lot of benefit to doing like the metas, and the metas being there. Like, the rewards is the main thing. Like, one of the main things as
Yeah.
well is like there is a lot of rewards. There's a lot. There's legendary armor. There's all the skins. There's all the achievements. There's all the amount of items you can get towards the other things. There's tons of gold to be made. And I think, like you all said, there isn't really a lot of that in Path of Fire. It's more of achievements, and skins are there, but they are unlocked through achievements rather than buying them specifically. I think there is some you can buy when you do some of the.
So do you think that the reasoning behind them not making the map metas as prevalent or as impactful as in Heart of Thorns, because they somehow got the feedback from Heart of Thorns that people didn't like being forced to do the map meta,
I mean, I guess.
or being shamed into doing it, I guess?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I could see that, and I mean, the thing is that I think no matter what, there's always going to be people or players who don't like a certain type of content and complain about it. You know what I mean? Like, this isn't actually content that I want to do, so I'm annoyed at it. Or I love this content, so I'm annoyed that they don't just focus on that, right?
Good Wars 2 players don't complain about it.
Yeah, I've never heard
it.
But it's like,
sarcasm if
on
you're
one
listening
hand,
to
I
it.
can understand, because I guess on some of those maps, like when a meta is happening, I mean, there is so much that goes on. Like, there are massive enemies that might spawn that could completely destroy you. There are, like, if you're just minding your own business, it can be alarming sometimes. But at the same time,
Sounds like experience there.
I mean, yeah, it happens sometimes. But like at the same time,
That's
having
true.
played a lot of different MMOs, I personally think that the value you get out of having something that so many people can do on a map that is like actual open world content, which so many games struggle to design, and that can tell an epic story and struggle in a way that, like, I don't even care if the frames drop. Like, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
And like, that might have even been some of why, because, oh, well, frame gets really bad when the huge dragon appears or when this huge thing appears. So maybe we'll scale them down a whole bunch so players don't have to deal with that. But for me, that was like one of the things that first made me fall in love with Guild Wars 2, because I had always wanted to see something like that in an MMO that is capable of doing it, where you all come together on a map and you all engage in this epic struggle, not just an instance content, not just a, like, I wanted to feel that. So I think that if it was in response to feedback, maybe that's feedback they shouldn't have listened to.
Yeah,
I don't know if they
I
did.
also think that
Yeah.
feedback is more so in the minority, because I think if you ask anybody who plays an MMO, they're going to
They
be like,
want-
I love those group experiences, those cinematic fights where I feel like it's really meaningful and epic. So I think the people who are saying like, I don't like the big experience, they're more so in the minority. Granted, there is time for exploration, and that's fine. But I think that they got rid of the meta events too harshly. There was basically no map where it was like, oh, this is the meta. Maybe Domain of Abbey, but still, no one really did too much Serpent's Ire, because it was also like,
maybe it was just an overreaction to the response to Dragon's Den, which was only meta and not other things.
yeah,
Maybe.
True.
I mean,
I
I
don't
mean-
understand.
I still feel that, like, We're going to push on a little bit, but just a kind of link, I guess, to what I'm trying to think about to other things, because there's so much to talk about. I feel like they had a plan though, and I think that I don't know if it was because of complaints, because I don't think that meta events were massively complained about. I think the maps were the complaint, and the thing with where we are now is can you imagine if there were meta events in those maps as well as all the meta we've got right now that goes on with the current stuff, with the amount of maps we got added with every episode of the Living Story? There is a lot of meta events going on
definitely,
now, and I think that was purpose. They went to lead on to go to those maps with the Living Story, and then be like, well, they're gonna have this leveling experience. We want those maps there to introduce mounts. We want these maps there to be and I would rather them not be a way through to the next, Living Story. But, we want them pushing to this content which is current, and also maybe, where the story is continuing to. I almost do think of Path of Fire as a way through to the current content of the game, of the Living Story. And I don't think that's obviously an intention. They would obviously like people to go back to these maps. It's something they've created. You don't want this to just be there, but that's the way it feels.
I feel like that's the calculation with every map they make, though, right? That's just how it is. You make a map and it exists as a draw for people currently playing the game who want to do the new thing, and if there's a meta, then it's the meta of the hour, because that's what people are playing currently. But 3 months later, if they have a new map with a new meta, that's probably what they're playing instead.
Yeah, I mean, it does raise a good question about how they make this, have slightly more longevity. And it has been interesting because I actually, Path of Fire's story, which is something we haven't really talked about too much, but like thinking about Path of Fire as just like a vehicle to where we are now. I don't know, because I do think that maybe like the true culmination of a lot of the major arc that we were experiencing did happen in Living Season 4. Like the finale there with everything, like that feels like such, we have the stuff that starts with Aurene and then spans everything and then kind of culminates, in that Season 4. But at the same time, Path of Fire had some crazy memorable moments to me. Like the whole Balthazar death thing, like, I lost my mind. Like, that was so amazing to me. I was so excited to see that. I loved that story beat. Joko is really memorable. The setting is honestly one of the most interesting, like, interpretations of a sort of Egyptian-themed society, and Africa and the regions and all the kind of desert regions that sort of encompass that. Like, I loved that in a fantasy world, the idea of there being a society that, unlike many other fantasies, isn't like, oh, necromancy is bad, but instead is like, what if we just were all undead and lived forever? But also, I ruled over you. Like, I love that. Like, it's so cool, and it creates this really interesting setting, like it's so fascinating. So even if like some of the design and stuff maybe felt mechanically a little bit lackluster, or like, some of the maps and things didn't always back up, I think, the magnitude of struggles, I do think the setting and world and some of the little Guild Wars 1 references they worked in, and like, I do really love that. And there were some really memorable moments for me in Path of Fire as far as story goes.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? It's story. Like, it's the depth of and that's where they didn't go into with Heart of Thorns. It wasn't really about the story specific. I mean, I think they tried to flesh it out with different races. I don't feel like it was. I don't feel like they got to a place where they felt, where it was close to Path of Fire at all. Because like the Joko stuff, when you talk about that, like that was massive. Like that was such an overarching theme of like, you've got Balthazar and everything else, but like some of the best moments are like, teaching the young people about, the ways of Joko and the correct ways, like, picking these options that weren't ethical at all, and just being like, a bit of an arsehole. And these kind of things, which were actually quite good. And like, for some reason, one of the biggest things I remember in Path of Fire is bandaging people in one of the temples and just like giving people different things, like, trying to fix their broken leg and stuff like that. I still remember this stuff. And so like, I feel like it was more about definitely building the story of the people and everything else that was coming up, and even moving forward. So that's where I'm kind of like,
I think
I don't know.
possibly a good way to describe it is that in Heart of Thorns, the story seems to have been built to move you through the maps, and in Path of Fire, the maps were built to move you through the story because the story was always important.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
well said.
Yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much. Yeah. Yeah.
But I also think that the region of Path of Fire kind of gets some leeway. Well, it doesn't impress me as much because they already had a lot of content and story and narrative to build off from. I think in the instance of Heart of Thorns, they were trying to build something basically from scratch, these regions and the story itself. So possibly in a way, when ArenaNet was confronted with building something that is fairly new and doesn't have a lot of reference, they might fumble a little bit, because I do think that they should have fleshed out the Itzel and the New Hawk and the Exalted a little bit more.
Yeah.
But when they have that extra padding, such as they did with Path of Fire, I think they can really knock things out of the park.
That's a really good point, honestly, because Heart of Thorns, I think, has just as intriguing of a setting. And there are some huge questions from that we still just don't, like the multiple trees. I mean, Sylvari as a species are truly, I think, one of the most interesting choices in Guild Wars 2 as far as like a racial design goes, because like, and get ready everybody, here we go. So I do raiding, but I also love some role playing. So I have recently been doing a lot of research on the Sylvari because I have a Sylvari character. And this is part of why I always talk freely about role playing, because I think it's a really amazing way to like engage with the game and the world.
Is she a second-born?
Yes. Yes, he is.
Okay.
But I mean, there were a lot of things there with the story that I didn't even know about the Silver. Like I was like, whoa, this is so interesting. This is so cool. This is so different than so many other games. As far as like a fantasy elf race goes, it's really fascinating to have this idea of sentient plant life that may or may not have been created initially to be used as a tool by an ancient draconic entity. It's just so neat.
Storyline, by the way.
It's so neat. So like Heart of Thorns is fascinating. And I do almost like, Heart of Thorns, I do wish that we had seen more story-wise, but I think the world is immersive enough that like you can get a lot of stuff if you kind of explore it and really dig into it. Path of Fire, I do think could have had a bit more of an immersive world, but the story was really strong. It'll be really interesting. I'm hoping they can hybridize both of those experiences. I mean, Cantha already has a lot of basis, right? But Path of Fire, I do think was sort of bulked out with that, like you pointed out, Kroof. That context, I think, supported it a lot. But I mean, we also haven't seen Cantha for ages. So I mean, it's interesting to see all these parts of the world, new stuff that's been drawn from old stuff, like in Path of Fire, and then stuff that is old stuff but has been isolated, for however many generations and could have changed drastically.
Gives them some leeway.
It's amazing. Yeah, it's interesting to see how they kind of handle that. And Path of Fire, I think, was a great story expansion in many, many ways.
Oh no, the story was good. The story is better than Heart of Thorns, I feel. Well,
Is it weird that I kind of prefer Heart of Thorns?
It is weird. It is weird.
More than
Path of Fire.
Well, the thing is, the story of Heart of Thorns was awesome. Like the story, like the premise of it is awesome. This dragon, like like Berta just said, like the Sylvari being created essentially as evil goons, and like and not being so, but then kind of half being so, depending on who you are, and then and just like the whole dragon thing, and that's not what Path of Fire is. Path of Fire is Balthazar. It's like a completely different enemy, like which is actually in many instances one completely different kind of storyline really for Guild Wars 2. Like it's not a dragon that you're against.
One thing that I was fairly well, looking back, kind of pissed off at is that they didn't utilize the Zaishin as much. Like Balthazar's devout followers. They kind of replaced them with the Forged, but even then they didn't really establish the Forged as well as they did, say, the Mordrum. Because it was they were his minions, but we only got one champion, the Herald of Balthazar. The other ones, it was kind of just like, well, these are just some random mobs. So I would have liked more establishment of the villains.
I guess
specifically Balthazar's supporters.
So what is it again? They
That's true.
take souls from the underworld and like tie them to
Yeah.
bodies in.
They use
well,
exalted magic, and then they put them in spirits into frames, and then the spirits puppeteer them, and
It's
they do
pretty-
a little circus dance, and they do slashies.
That's
I mean,
a good
that's super
description.
interesting. The human gods element of Path of Fire is, especially when you like look at, okay, so we have Balthazar and we have Joko, right? So like these two entities in many ways are, I think, really fantastic to put up against each other, because we have one who is like a deity, but who reveals his own agenda and humanity in many ways because, of the way that he's sort of diverged and is choosing to act. And then we have, Joko, who is essentially a self-made god in like the physical realm, you could say. And seeing the two of them together is really interesting. And I would have liked to see, like you said, Kroof, I think a little bit more of the overall impact a lot of this has on humanity as like a whole. Because I remember when I got to the story beat where the gods, like you go in and you're like, oh my God, I'm like in the place where the gods are, but nobody's home. And you're like, this is weird. And you're kind of like exploring. It's like, we went on vacation. We peace. See ya. Bye. And I was like, what? Like,
They've left.
I was like, this could actually change the entire foundation of every religion. And like, I was like, this is insane and amazing, It would have been so cool to see the actual like follower factions. And we do see a little bit of this with like some of our human companions. And am I remembering correctly in that like Kaz has some kind of reaction to it? Or I think we see like some of the human companions respond to it in some way.
Kaz is really shocked.
Yeah.
And so
but,
kind of like with oh, continue. Sorry.
No. I mean, please take it away. Like, I just thought that was interesting, but it's a huge, massive thing that kind of gets put under wraps, because they don't want the world to panic, I guess. But it would have been really interesting to see the world panic.
And especially because the gods are kind of they're gone at this point. I think it would have been the prime opportunity to physically showcase the gods in like an actual model. So I'm kind of sad at that point because we saw Cormyr and we saw Balthazar, though we didn't see any of the other gods in their physical manifestation.
Or maybe they're coming up. You never know.
Well, I'm telling you,
I don't know how they could bring them back though, or why they would.
After the Cantha expansion,
that'd be some serious retcon.
since for like maybe 6 years now, I've been saying, and I say it every podcast I'm on, next expansion's Cantha. Before they announced even, I said next expansion Cantha, and then it's Guild Wars in space. And in space includes being in the mists. We're off to search for the gods that left us.
I actually back that up, and I feel the same, to be completely honest. I mean, it's a huge thing that they could use. There's still so much beyond, Path of Fire drew obviously from Guild Wars 1 story so heavily. But, I mean, as we continue to look forward, that Guild Wars 1 influence, and it's not a bad thing. Like, of course we need to push beyond what we've seen before, but we do also need to address and tie up the world as we know it in many ways. But there's so much even beyond just the struggles. And I do think that Path of Fire has some interesting things in it that could be a stepping stone for future story, right? I mean, that human gods reveal is pretty massive in scale. And the fact that humans are aliens is also pretty wild. So, I mean, there's a lot there that I think they could explore and that was set up in Path of Fire.
Absolutely. I think Guild Wars 2, though, I feel as though it's the story of Tyria. It's the story of the dragons of Tyria, and that might end with the Cantha expansion. So if we do Guild Wars in space, it might be Guild Wars 3. Okay,
we need to push on to another subject because we've gone from mounts, maps to now space. So we're definitely done with that one.
Story.
And it's the guiding force in the podcast way of things. I love hearing your guys' passion, which is
I'm sure you love me bringing it up every single time you see me too. Yeah.
I don't care. I like Star Trek, dude. I'm a sci-fi geek. I don't care. It's good. Asura is my main. If we go into space, it's because of my race. So,
Utopia would be exciting as well. I mean, there's a lot of things, but
all things.
We're
going to talk about
more practical things.
We're going to talk about also another big thing, which is sometimes scary if you're a PvPer. But also major part of the content, which is why for World v World and PvP specifically, and PvE, but like PvP, World v World, that's our content when you get the expansion, is the elite specializations.
Oh yeah.
Bow, 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 bow.
That's appropriate, actually. That's completely appropriate.
You need like a soundboard.
So with each expansion so far, so we got a ton of elite specializations. If you don't know what elite specialization is because you're listening to this on Anchor or Spotify or Google or iTunes or wherever, and you're like, oh, I want to get into Guild Wars 2. It's basically like a subclass for a main class. Specialization in WoW is very similar. And in other games, Elder Scrolls Online and other stuff like that, it's almost like a guild or a thing which a new line which you can add skills to, I guess. But in Guild Wars 2, it's very much a class. It feels like a very solid part of your class that you have to pick. But this was good, and I'm interested to see, like, what did you guys jump to first? What was your first elite special? Was it a thing with your main character? I'm gonna ask Kroof first. Was it the thing where it's like, oh, I want to try this elite specialization because it looks cool, or is it like I went to my main character and I was just like, I'm gonna play that even though it doesn't look the coolest? What was your first elite specialization in?
Well, I kind of did follow that track of going with the main character, but I was very fortunate because I'd always wanted Guardians to have a support type role, and when Firebrand was first being revealed, I was like, oh damn, a Condi class. I was like, I don't really want this. But then one of the developers said like they're changing instance support for casted support, and I was like, ooh. So during the betas, I kind of formulated and messed around with it, and I was like, oh, it's very applicable to play a support role, especially with all the boon access. So I was very happy with Firebrand. I think right now, Firebrand is, I don't know, what do you guys think? At least to me, it seems like Firebrand's support aspects outshine its condition aspects, because I think Core Guardian is more
enough
so
for condition as well, yeah.
It just
Yeah,
depends.
I tend
enough,
to see it.
but
I tend to
on
see it
the
used
outcome.
more for support, especially in like raid context. I mean, you can take it for other stuff. It's not like it's
Yeah.
useless. You know?
It's when it first came out though, it was definitely a better Condi Guardian than Core Guardian though.
This is interesting because we're all talking from different perspectives, because in PvP now it's like it's about that damage.
Yeah.
Like, you know, in World v World as well, it's like support and stuff, and I don't know, there was hardcore. It started off as the more hardcore support, and then they changed things around and amulets and stuff, and then it was like, oh, we can play like conditions of this and it can be supportive, and it's more of a hybrid now. So it's like, oh, okay, so it's actually evolved.
It's the perfect class essentially.
It's annoying.
Yeah,
because it
but I
does
think
too much.
It has
As a
zero
whole-
weaknesses.
yeah, not talking about the elite spec in general, but I do think as a Guardian main, Guardian needs some like extreme nerfs to the burning department. But that was my first elite spec.
And that's
in
your
Path
main
of Fire.
character. That's your main character as well, isn't it? That's your
Yeah,
main. Alright,
so.
okay. And you enjoyed it. You
Easy
liked
pick.
it. It was good. You felt it was appropriate.
Yeah.
You felt it was better than DH Dragon Hunter from Half-On, or just different.
From what I wanted, I did find Firebrand to be more fulfilling for my particular role. But as a whole, I think Firebrand was one of the many classes where they broke the balance, which is a larger topic of the elite specs of
Yeah.
Path of Fire. But I do think Dragon Hunter, I think all of the Heart of Thorns specs pretty much were better balanced and somewhat better executed in terms of I'd rather have underpowered classes than severely overpowered classes. But I think Firebrand was good.
Okay. Oh. Boots?
Yeah,
what did you-
interestingly. Oh, Boots, go
sorry.
ahead.
No, I was going to ask Boots, but did you have a point on what Kroof was saying? Sorry.
I was just gonna say that it's interesting because I think I probably play more Heart of Thorns elite specs just in the stuff that I do, in the content that I do. But it's interesting hearing about like the elite specs, especially at release, because like I said, I came into the game like just post Path of Fire, so I think there had already been some, you know, rebalancing that had been done a little bit. So yeah, like for me, it's been interesting because Firebrand I've always wanted to really get into, but I think because I already had so many specs and things that I was using and that are, you know, were eligible in many other ways for other content, the Path of Fire elite specs aren't often as played for me, which is maybe I need to start getting more into those. But I do a lot of the Heart of Thorns one. So
Okay.
I would agree.
Yeah,
I do too.
definitely. I'd say Heart of Thorns. If they feel underpowered now, I don't know, because when they first came out, for sure they were. There's a whole debate about why are these twice as good as any core spec that we could possibly use, and they did go through a round of nerfs a few times. Also, Chronomancer got completely.
Don't talk about it.
Chronomancer got completely redone. Berserker
I was
got completely redone.
on stream in front of like 5,000 people or something when that meta was in season 1 of Pro League for ESL.
Yeah, it killed PvP actually, kind of
destroyed everything.
Chronomancer was like the most glaring problem.
Yeah,
That
it
was
was
sadness.
I don't think it was my fault.
No,
I don't think it was my fault because I made a build.
Your fault was the Revenant Ventari build.
Right, but nobody plays that.
remember
That's
that.
fine.
Everybody was playing it. At least
Everyone
the game
was
was
for a while.
like
No,
Yeah,
but
Tara
like,
Andrew
so
was
I
my
made the Resmer build right
All right, but
after.
let's keep on topic, okay? I've only got a half an hour.
All right, okay.
So keep on topic.
So, but
What
with
did you
your
play?
Path of Fire spec?
Half of
So
Fire's
about a few months before Path of Fire came out, they nerfed all of the Heart of Thorns builds and all the Heart of Thorns elite specs, and we were like, oh, okay, they're preparing for
Mega
Path of
power.
Fire balance to make Path of Fire the new hotness that everybody plays for a while, and then maybe they'll nerf it a little bit afterwards, which they did. I don't think everything got the nerfs they needed by now, but but still they did. They finally did Mesmer not too long ago, and but Mirage, I mean, and yeah. So Path of Fire, what did I do first? That's the question, right? I did.
Yeah.
I also did Fire. I also did Firebrand.
wow,
But it wasn't
okay.
for support purposes. And it
Virtual
Firebrand
fist bump.
fist bump. And Guardian isn't my main. I just at that time I was trying to get a Virtues Core Guardian build to work, a Burning Virtues Core Guardian build to work for raids and stuff. And it was hitting like 22k DPS at the time, which was pretty good. But I was like, okay, what this needs is like one more Condi line on Guardian, because the third line for the build for the Core Guardian was like, it could have been 3 different things and it didn't really add to the damage. So I was like, okay, this just needs one more line for Condi damage, and then they made the Firebrand, which worked nicely, and it added like 10k DPS, and it also added the ability to have quickness in the build, and maybe eventually Mesmers wouldn't be used, 2 Mesmers in every composition, but that only came a little bit later anyway.
Okay. So it was like about experiments and trying to get something to something.
Yeah, it was just to test out to see if it boosts, and it did. It did definitely boost the DPS quite a bit. And then things eventually got evened out, but yeah.
Okay. Cool. But Jess, what did you go for? Well, I don't know. It's different. Like when, I guess it's not different, but you just played it later.
It's different. Yeah, it's a different experience. I mean, it's really fascinating hearing people talk about this, because I'm excited for the next X Pack, because I'll be doing exactly that. You know what I mean? As it was, like, when I was playing through it.
Did we play Path of Fire during the next X Pack? Just new expansion, Path of Fire, Planet 1. What are you doing?
No. I mean, like, the whole like rush for new stuff. You know what I mean? Here I am in this. I'm gonna pick up my new elite spec and try it out, right? It was different for me because it wasn't so much like, here's the new stuff that I ordered that came to the table. It was like, here's the whole buffet of stuff that already exists. What will you pick? And so for me, the 2 most played that I do are Dragon Hunter for open world, just PvE nonsense. And then I do Druid and raids. And both of those were Heart of Thorns. And there's been a lot of stuff like Firebrand and Scourge in particular, like the 2 that I think are really interesting. I really like those ones, but I just have not experimented with them as much. And my Mesmer, I'm just now getting up, and you know, like it's just interesting to me to hear, I think, a lot of the talk, because for me, yeah, it wasn't so much a choice of like, what is new, I'm going to try it. It was more just like, what am I doing? What do we have a need for? Like, we needed a druid in raiding, and I was excited about that. And I just kind of picked from what was available. And it turned out that most of the stuff that I've picked has been mostly Heart of Thorns initially. And I'm just like now really getting invested in some of the builds and other stuff with like Soul Beast I'm working on. And Firebrand I'm trying to train up a little bit so I can take in. And like, it's just now that I'm getting to the Path of Fire ones. So I don't know if that speaks to it being a natural evolution of elite specs, or if it was just because it seems like maybe some of those Heart of Thorn specs had a stronger later place in like overall sort of content. I'm not sure. I mean, Firebrand is hugely powerful. A lot of them are used a ton. I'm not sure why I gravitated towards those specifically.
I think Druid. I played Druid as well in raids for like because we needed someone to do that. I was an engineer, and I was just like, I was a supportive character. It's just my natural role, I guess.
Because you came to it, it's different for you because you had the smorgasbord of all the classes, Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire. So it wasn't like, okay, now we're finally getting something new. It's everything was new to you.
I would love to have like a survey of this, like of like knowing where people went to, like class wise and like elite spec wise. Although you have to go through the different things, and I guess you're starting off in Heart of Thorns if you get if you get the character boost, right? You don't get sent to Path of Fire. You get sent to Heart of Thorns, so it's the natural progression, right? So you're gonna kind of do that, and then so they probably will give you an option. I think maybe you never know with the next expansion. I'm not.
Are you talking about the next expansion again?
I'm not talking about it. And I started going off topic. Shame.
Jeb,
Okay.
we've been trying to keep you on point this whole time. We've been going off the rails.
We don't have any.
I'm just the guiding force today. I'm letting you guys talk. I just went for my main. My main switched from
Hollow.
Mesmer. Yeah, I went straight for Holosmith. I was, what I'm like. I love that, I love that kind of like 80s feeling, I love the synth wave. I love the, the whole video game, very 80s, like, 8-bit, like just all that kind of stuff. And when the Holosmith came along and Photon Forge, I was just like, that looks so good. That looks fun. Like that is completely different. It's very Asuran as well. I was like, this is very like super adventure box. I was like, this is fun.
Galamancy.
Yeah, it's very unique, and that was what I loved about it when I first saw it as well, and I saw the big like elite with the the more just the beam. I was just like that was cool. Like it's just essentially like a big massive gun you pull out and it's just like boom. I don't know. I just loved it. It was great.
Big gun go boom.
Pretty much.
I think that was my second. I think that was my second class that I went to right after I tried out the Firebrand. I did like I redid, what was it called? The
hand puppet
minor trait. The minor trait that you use your tool belt skills and it shoots lightning out. I forget what it's called now.
Static discharge, yeah.
Static discharge. Yeah, redid a static discharge build because you got a new short cooldown instant cast tool belt skill.
Oh, static discharge was like static discharge was a big part of that build at the beginning. Early meta PvP,
but
like
before they nerfed it.
Yeah, they changed it. But like I think PvE got used as well. But it's a bit ridiculous right now in PvP. It's in a place, but that's just different game mode and just the way it is because like balance is another podcast. And it's a big problem with the game. It's one of the biggest problems they have. And part of that is because of the different modes that are available and because they are all popular in their own way. Because they have good things going on in all these modes, and that's not a bad thing. It just means balance kind of struggles. Anyway. But yeah, so like elite specs wise, I think they were fantastic. I think in terms of comparing them to Heart of Thorns as well, I just wanted to have kind of a quick discussion. I guess it's not really a discussion, but more of a personal point of view, personal preference maybe. I don't know. I'm still not sure which one I prefer because I think...
Yeah, I guess besides the first one, what is everybody's favorite Path of Fire elite spec now?
Oh, favorite. Why do I have to pick one?
Which one do you enjoy the most?
I don't
Which
know
was
if I have like a favorite.
the-
I've been playing. I know.
different ways of playing, right? I guess.
Despite my beliefs that, I mean, I guess for right now, Scourge is pretty great. I do like Scourge a lot. I've been playing some. Yeah, just Scourge.
This is the thing though, because like Scourge to me is like the most boring one. I'm just saying. This is the thing.
No,
It's
I think
so
Firebrand
personal.
is the most boring one.
It is boring.
In terms
yeah.
of
It is
in
boring.
terms of the general design. They were like, oh, every ability is a cone. Here, mantras, they're a cone. Have some cones. You
I'm
want ice
getting
cream on that cone?
cream.
So I find Firebrand to be the most
Yeah, the
glaringly
next one is going to
boring.
be ice. Yeah, it's going to be ice line for Firebrand, and it's going to be about chilling, and you can just combine the fire with the ice, and you just get frosted flakes thrown in your face. I don't know. Mr. Whippy comes out. I don't know if that's a thing over here. It's not okay. Look it up. Look it up. It's very British. Yeah, no, I understand. My personal favorite is actually, other than Holosmith, is actually Reaper. Love Reaper. Reaper is
Oh, I
Reaper.
love
so
Reaper.
good.
But
Like-
I'm talking about Path of Fire, though.
Are you're just talking about that? Okay.
I thought that's what this was all about.
I mean,
What are we
Hollis,
doing
that's
here?
true. That's true. Like if I like Holosmith is I just because also because of my main character as well. I think I just connected to that so, and it is my favorite. It is my favorite. But also at the same time, I don't prefer it over Scrapper, which is weird
I actually really like Scrapper too.
because I really like Scrapper. So I'm like,
I love Scrapper.
I don't know. Holosmith does bore me a bit, but it's only because it's so strong.
Yeah,
I don't like
I think
playing
that's
the
like
strongest stuff.
that's the general fault of Path of Fire, is that they made the elite specs way too strong. They gave AoEs to every single class, AoEs that were so incredibly large, where if you're playing structured PvP, there's no escaping them. They blew
Yeah.
conditions onto every single ability, and it was just it was really hard to manage.
It's very
It
very
lost a
much,
sense of strategy.
It's very colourful. I've spoken to and I might get in trouble for this. No, I won't. I'll be fine. I've spoken a lot of the design mentality. I've spoken to ex employees, and this is not like, I'm not going to say anyone's name, but a lot of the design
It was calling
mentality.
Johansson, everybody.
No, definitely not. But like a lot of the design mentality behind abilities, like specifically, I think, for elite specializations and stuff like that in the past, I know has been, because I've spoken to many people about this, has been about the flashiness of abilities. It's been about like the glaring of awesomeness of these things, the sparkly effects, the cool animations, and that's been a massive important part of especially of Path of Fire, and you can see it. Like if you did not have some kind of condition before where like particle effects like triggered something, I'm sorry, but it's gonna happen in Guild Wars 2. I'm trying to be as sensitive as I can about this, but there is issues. And it's very flashy, it's very big, it's very loud. And
It's definitely,
I don't know.
it's definitely a very, like, if you just play a core Ellie, or if you play a core warrior and just swing, use all your weapon abilities, just go do
They've
that.
been adjusted
And-
though over the years. They've been taken down. They've been
I know, but
adjusted
just
heavily.
use them, and
Yeah.
then you go to Path of Fire and you use like those weapons.
You're like,
It's,
yeah, this is the introduction to, you just pick up a sword and you wave it, very much Colin Johansson. And, do you remember?
Working.
and then when you go to Path of Fire, it's like you pick up a sword and it's actually 12
glows.
swords. And it glows.
I mean, I
and
think
it's
that some of
fire
that
and-
is just the nature of like classes evolving in an MMO, right?
Mm.
There's like so
Yeah.
many different reasons for this. Like on one hand, from a marketing standpoint or like a hype standpoint leading up to content, if you have classes that visually look more exciting, people get excited. And like there's nothing wrong with that. To be completely honest, I remember it was one of the expansions of Final Fantasy 14, Stormblood, and they were showing off like my preferred class's skills, and everybody else got these fun shiny things, and then we got to mine and I was like, I have a bigger rock that I throw.
What's it like?
Good
It was
rock.
my page, yeah, and I was like,
I had the same.
Bigger rock
I
the
was
library.
like, this is the greatest disappointment I've had thus far. Because you're watching like
There's
everybody
that.
else and you're like excited. And then you see yours and you're like, that sucks though. So like on one hand, people do want, like they
It's such a
want
good
to see-
reaction. That sucks
Like-
though. Oh,
like
that
they
sucks.
want to see
Continue.
that their character, the class that they've chosen, like reflects something about them and is fun and like shows our increase in power and shows like
Yeah.
you know
Yeah.
who we are. And I think that it is tough because from a design standpoint, like you pointed out in Guild Wars 2, the modes that are in that game are so diverse. The amount of abilities you have to choose from are so diverse. The elite specializations are so diverse that trying to balance for all of those different modes and trying to introduce new classes in a way that many other MMOs do, right? Where it's like, we'll overpower all the new classes because like players want to feel powerful when they come in and we're going to give them cool effects and stuff. But we want to make sure everybody feels pretty cool, so we'll all give them a bunch of effects. Like they almost can't do that in Guild Wars 2 because there's so many different kinds of content that are played so thoroughly that it's hard to do that and then not have all of your other game modes completely break. You know, it's
But
very
I
tough.
think they'll
It
try.
feels like
They'll
when
definitely try.
it feels like when new expansions have come out so far, Heart of Thorns and Path of Fire, they have done that, and
Yeah.
then a month or two later toned it down. Be like, okay,
Yeah.
you've had your fun.
That's standard.
Now-
That's standard.
Yeah, but
That's the
I'm
MMO
fine with
standard,
the
I think.
visual effects. I actually think that some of the older effects that they've toned down look much worse in comparison. But like they put so many, not visual effects, but like game effects, like conditions and damage and boons onto one skill, and
Yeah.
they made it so oppressive. And the visual effects can be toned down and stuff.
That's another thing. That's another thing.
I'm
Yeah.
all fine with like actually impressive abilities when it's like an ultimate or like an elite. That should look impressive. But they
But you shouldn't have
Power
25
crop
stacks of
so
burning on you in
much.
2 seconds. No. No. Oh, God, I get it out.
Yeah,
It's
it's a good point, honestly. I mean, the fact that in any of these elite specs or things, you can scroll over and maybe you've read that thing 50 times, but there is some little thing that got wedged in on that ability that you didn't even realize that it did, and you're like, wait, hold on, what? Like, how long
Yeah,
has this
they're
even
like,
been a thing?
oh, this needs to be buffed, or like, let's just add fury to it, because why not? It's like why?
And it feels really counterintuitive, and especially to players who might not be super into like digging in a very nitty-gritty way, right? Like they're kind of glancing through as they get their skills and they're like, okay, well, this seems like that would work. Or maybe they're just grabbing a build, but they don't realize that this one thing has like, it generates might when it hits, or it does, you know, like it's,
Yeah.
it can be really overwhelming for newer players, I think, to come in and see all of that. And I didn't realize that did the Heart of Thorns specs also have like quite
They
as many
did.
things shoehorned?
They did. I would say. I
All
think they
builds,
did.
all-
I think our complaints about Path of Fire elite specs being too powerful and too much on them can easily be attributed to
Oh, it's the
Heart
same.
of Thorns as well.
Yeah. I know, but this is
I
the thing.
think-
Yeah, it's like it's the power when you introduce a new thing in most MMORPGs that, like in terms of classes, that thing is most powerful. Like, and it made sense. Like, we will make these things powerful. I don't think the intention is to make it massively over the top, unbalanced. But there is a lot of like, you know, this is a selling point. It should be strong, and we should show that it should be strong, whether or not it's in a visual way, whether it's not, it's in an actual way. There is literally people who have talked about this before. Like, we purposely make this shit more powerful. No one says it, but like you feel it and you know it when you're playing it. You're like, this is ridiculous. Like, this is stupid.
Yeah.
And when I played Reaper, that was a feeling as well. But like Scrapper, like, oh god, yeah, it was crazy
I think
powerful.
Reaper only was really strong in the condition department with Deathly Chill.
I mean, it was
power
power
was
though.
pretty
It
weak.
was like power. I don't know.
It was so slow that every other class was so much faster that
Oh, you mean
comparatively
getting
it didn't
around.
have as much of an effect.
I mean, I guess.
And I think when you look from core Guild Wars 2 to Heart of Thorns, there was definitely a power increase. But when you
Yeah.
compare the two elite
Mhm.
specialization launches, I think Heart of Thorns professions and elite specs were markedly less powerful than the launch of Path of Fire.
I don't know.
I
I, mean,
think
there's still a place for all Heart of Thorns.
Yeah.
But that's only after years of
balance, maybe?
fine tuning buffs and deep and nerfs and stuff.
This is probably more of a conversation for a balanced conversation, right?
Yeah,
Because I think there's different. Because
Yeah, but one of the points was how they were comparing to Heart of Thorns, and that
True.
innately goes with like the power levels.
Like for example, Chronomancer never left.
Yeah,
right?
but that's also because they
Yeah.
didn't actually introduce anything with Path of Fire that could fulfill the role that Chronomancer does specifically.
They did, but it was 2 classes together.
Oh.
Yeah,
I think,
and so
like,
nobody really wanted to do that.
we're definitely
Until they
gonna,
made like Alacrity.
yeah. I mean, we're talking. I think I'm talking about different modes as well. We're talking coming
Yeah,
from different
absolutely.
places.
It's hard to discuss balance without,
unless it was
'cause
like
we-
this is
you're
a
talking
PvP.
PvP.
podcast. Yeah.
someone else is talking rating. Yeah, it's
Yeah. That's tough to do. But anyway, I wanted to. We haven't got a lot of time left because I've got to jump over to something else in a bit. But I just wanted to talk quickly about something that I think has been very neglected for a long time, and maybe even since the start of the game, or even since like Guild Quest came out and everything
say
else.
guilds, yeah.
Is guilds, and will that was not much love for guilds or guild functionality or guild missions, or it was just a guild hall as far as I remember. I don't know if there was anything else added, but I don't know. I think that was one of the downsides. But Path of Fire I think was still great. There was 2 points of which I wasn't massively happy with as a player, I think, and that was guilds was one, and the other one was the marketing, which I think everyone's spoken about in previous podcasts forever. It was very, very different marketing like strategy between, and I don't feel like that was the marketing department's fault. I feel like it was even like, I think that was a vision thing.
Was the, like, do we have the numbers of Path of Fire sales versus Heart of Thorn sales?
I mean, we could probably, if we were.
Yeah, pull it up, see if the marketing.
Are you just telling me to do it? Why don't you do it? I'm not doing that.
Whose podcast is this?
But the thing is as the game gets older though as well, it's difficult to compare those because there's different, like, you know, different games come out, games get older, games will decline, and then, you know, so those X packs bring people back, but it won't be as, I don't know if even any game where the game gets older, expansions come back, you're gonna get the same kind of numbers. But impactful wise, like, we were involved a lot more in Heart of Thorns. Like, I remember when, I mean, I think maybe you guys played on streams, Red Chest wasn't there, but we pre Heart of Thorns, we were given access to a client where we can go and play the new classes before anyone else on stream live. And it was a day of it. And so like people would come to Twitch and they would watch us play all of these new specializations before anyone else could, and they could look at it. And every stream was cool. Like, it was very cool. And it was like, there was preview events around the world. Oh, it was. I
didn't even know that happened.
Oh yeah, there was preview events. There was one in the UK in Brighton where a ton of content
do that
creators
with End of
went.
Dragons.
And well, maybe they will. I mean, and there was an American one. I don't know. And maybe there was an American one as well, which was very big. I think the one that happened for Path of Fire, people got very upset about. I think there was like 3 people invited to America, but like they were just very, very different. And that was a big surprise for me. But like more to the question of like guilds, which is the original one. Did you guys feel like, you know, they needed to, that it was something that, because this could be just my opinion and maybe people actually just don't care, but like being called Guild Wars 2, and this question's come up in previous podcasts where we've talked about where's the guild in Guild Wars 2, like where is the guild in Path of Fire?
That's a good question.
You know, like, because it's slowly, I mean, if we go to space, you can literally replace guild with space and it will not matter probably in this reign at this time. And I still think it's a very unfortunate thing, because, and I was watching reviews of Path of Fire last night, and like 4 out of 5 of them said It feels very single player, Path of Fire. It feels very
Yeah.
single player. And the part of that is our earlier conversation when we were talking about a lack of meta events. We're talking about the strength of the story, and all of that is mostly single player instance. And obviously we can talk about the other characters, and also talking about the temple and the school and other stuff like that, which is open and event wise, but still most of the stuff was you could do solo. This is all single player stuff. Is there does anyone feel like there could have been a bit more guild focus in Path of Fire? Was that okay? Does it matter that there wasn't much?
I think it would be great to have more guild in Guild Wars too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think this is just like a general side effect of ArenaNet's decisions over the course of many years, where they've not really incentivized making group content as much as just like a single player narrative. It's just like the massively multiplayer aspect of Guild Wars 2 is just like a supporting feature, and they don't necessarily put effort, or as much effort as I would like to see, into raids, fractals, guild missions, which could have been the bounty system if they had just injected that into the guilds or expanded upon it.
Like bounty
And I
guild
think
quests?
or like not, or just like adding guild missions
Missions?
as the bounties.
Yeah.
Because they're pretty much the same thing. But I do think it's a shame that
Yeah.
there seems to be a decline over the years in the focus in community.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because I
know what you're
I
about to
hear
say.
this. No, I mean,
do.
I hear this a lot, and I mean, because you hear it a lot, you know that people are feeling. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there's nothing that like invalidates that. I do think though, I mean, like it's funny to me playing between so many different games that there is a real sense of community and wish to engage with it, you know? I mean, the guilds in Guild Wars 2 that, you know, we formed or I've even been a part of are so much more like full of people who are eager to engage, and seeing the amount of people that run things like map metas, seeing the amount of people that come to do all these different things, even with our latest season, like I don't think it's like it's absent. And I think that sometimes people really, I think, become almost resentful of the single player narrative because they feel as though it is somehow infringing upon the other content that they would get.
Mhm.
For me, I think that the single player narrative is incredible. We should have it. I think our story is in an amazing place. Like, it's something that gives longevity and connection to the game that can be played always and enjoyed always. But at the same time, I do agree that compared to other MMOs, the amount of like group content that is released is lower, right? And it seems like it's always this balance of, do we pick this thing or this thing? Do we have a fractal this patch, or do we do a raid? Do we do like, and so much of me wonders if that's because it is not a subscription model, and because the game is so low cost to entry that they literally just cannot sustain releasing multiple content always, which is tough, right? Because then we hear people talk about like hating that they have to spend money in the Black Lion Trading Company, but I'm like, the only way that the game will go get more revenue is if you know, like we have, it's so
There's not
cheap to
much,
play otherwise. It's so close to free to play. That it is tough, because I do think they have the community that would want to engage with it. I do think that having guild features in Path of Fire does seem like a no-brainer, because regardless of the lore origin of the name Guild Wars, right? People come in and they expect, hearing it, that it has some kind of guild play element, right? So I think you do need to develop that. And I think we do need more variety in that, because the longevity of the game will be sustained and supported by people getting rolled into guilds and interacting with them. But it's such a hard thing to talk about, to be honest. And obviously I have a lot of feelings on it, because I do feel like sometimes people just say like, ANET doesn't care, they don't care about this, they don't want to develop it, I wish they would just do this. And that's not to say anybody here has said that, you know, it's just like community stuff that I hear, when a lot of times I can't help but feel as though it is a bigger thing that we're not totally privy to, you know?
Yeah, so for me, I feel like it's possible the devs don't want to force. They want to encourage people to be in guilds, but not force people to be in guilds to experience content. So I could understand why they would not make you join a guild and build it up in order to do certain content, maybe in the real, like to do the bounties or to do raids. But then if you like, there's no reason to make a guild besides just playing with friends unless it's to do certain content, right? It's easier to do certain content if you have a guild because it's easier to organize with people you know and people you are able to communicate with. So that is, I think, that's the community we have and the kind of things we're doing now in Guild Wars 2, because it's a good thing to do if you want to do content with people. But I guess the question is that the only thing you want? Do you also want things that are locked behind guilds? Do you want to make World versus World, for example, in the future be tied to guilds instead of tied to servers? That's an interesting idea, and I think it's a good idea. But it's possible some people might not like it because they don't want to have to join a guild.
Yeah, exactly. I think the alliance system is probably going to be the one thing that not only saves
don't talk about
World
it.
of Warcraft.
Don't.
Freedom of
This is
speech.
not the time. Oh, it's gonna
Article 1. But I do
Can't
think
do it.
that in terms of guild systems, like the alliance is is one thing that will save not only World versus World, but the guild community. For at least people
that's
who enjoy
an expansion feature though. That's definitely
it
an
has
expansion.
to has to come with End of Dragons.
If it doesn't,
For
people
sure.
are gonna be sad. There's gonna be many pandas. Many pandas.
We know it's on their horizon, like they've talked about it. It's just we don't know where the horizon is actually going to be upon us. Like
it's also been
it might be on the horizon on another planet.
Quieted down a lot about it, and it worries me.
Oh yes. And
I think we just have to see. There are so many ways that they could integrate guilds. I think, like everybody's saying, even just to we talked about this on the whole guild episode, right? Ways that you could take like content that exists, but then also give it some kind of additional guild thing, so that you're not necessarily having to only develop content that blocks out a guild and that's it. You have to be in a guild to do it.
Yeah.
But that you can like take advantage, like Kroof, like you were saying with hunts, maybe having something extra where like each week there's a special hunt or something for the the guild that you can do that has certain rewards, or thinking about Path of Fire specifically, right? I loved Thorns Refuge. Like that, I know so many people have feelings on that, but like the idea of like, I'm always a sucker for any game that's like, get a place, make it nice, do fun stuff, unlock a new vendor, open the thing up, get more story, get this thing, put these cute things in.
Yeah, well, like housing is one of the biggest things in life, like games. If you look at the most popular games that are out there right now, like have been in the past, i.e. Minecraft, or i.e. like this year, one of the biggest titles, Animal Crossing, all these things like ESO's. Probably ESO's biggest end game is housing. Like, that there were many people who share that view of you. That's
people like seeing how they can like make their own custom place in the world. And with something like Sun's Refuge, I feel like that could have been content that like,
yes,
sure, it's single player, you have your own instance, but that would be super cool too if like as a guild you could move in there, or like rebuild it together through efforts, or contribute to donations, and maybe you could still engage with that on like a single player scale, but like as a guild being able to do something like that, and then maybe it would have unlocked new little spots, or like when you got the Skyscale hatchery, maybe you get a Skyscale hatchery in your guild hall, or like that would be so fun. And I think that they could integrate those things in a way that would still feel meaningful for a group to contribute, or like maybe if you had done that, then for the guild you unlock a new tier of vendor stuff that's like the sun, it's like the new armor or something that's like inspired by the group in Sun's Refuge. And I just think it would have been really neat to do something like that, and it wouldn't totally take away from like single player experience, but it would also give guilds something to do together that they could work towards.
I think I'm starting to wind down the podcast soon, because I do want to pop off quite soon, but I think that's very very good points, like Rook, there you bring up. It's the thing is and I'm going to leave you with something to ponder, everyone, as well, in that realm of things. I'm going to kind of move away from that conversation. Is that nowadays, and especially in a world, this is going to be very psychological, maybe philosophical as well. in a
Psychological and
I
philosophical.
love
Maybe.
philosophy.
I mean, they do mix together quite well, obviously.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, I have to read philosophy as well. The thing is, the world is a very different place now, especially since March maybe, for reasons. Where we and we've been going like this ever since, this is all about technology and going inside a lot more as well. And games and MMOs specifically used to be about those experiences, I feel, more than anything. And as we go into these areas where we're more on our own, we're more on thinking less about, the overarching people involved in the game, in communities specifically, that potentially unconsciously, maybe these things do start to go away. And it's a problem not just in Guild Wars 2. It's a massive problem in every single MMORPG at the moment. Every single one. WoW, definitely massive problem. ESO, even, still a big problem. There's a massive community. People do stuff together, but a lot of people play that game just to play through the story. And there's nothing wrong with that because they want Skyrim too. But there's still a massive issue of guilds. They've got... Their guild system is really interesting. It doesn't even have missions or anything like that. And it's just about trading, and that's very, very cool, but they've still got these problems. So many different games have these problems, but I think it's a lot to do with our time as well in the world. And I think, Guild Wars 2 probably is actually the most conscious mental health thing, and Chess knows this probably better than any of us, because being on the panel and everything else. And focused outside of the game on the community as well. Coming up, we're going to have, as we do every year, Extra Life for Kids is going on. We've got loads of different stuff from Marina, which is very, very awesome. And if you do ! Extra Life in the chat, you can actually find the link where I've started that off. So go donate to Seattle Children's Hospital. And I would appreciate it. We're officially starting that in November, by the way, mini plug. And I'll put this on the actual link for the thingy as well on audio. And YouTube. And sorry, it's Cherry. But just generally, I feel like, it's almost a way things are going kind of thing. And I feel it's very difficult. There's going to have to be a really big focus and push to go back to getting that involved in the game, and I feel like it's not just a Guild Wars 2 thing. I feel like it's a people thing. I think it's very much a people thing. So when we work that bit out, maybe it'll filter into work, into other places. And I'm not saying every game sucks in terms of this. I'm not saying every situation in life sucks. No one's together. No one's doing things together anymore. We're all just huddled in our homes. But I think since March specifically as well, we have been huddled in our homes a little bit more. We have been more separated as people.
I've actually, sorry to interrupt. I've actually been more social nowadays than I have before.
This is the thing, some people are. Yeah, there is an opposite as well to that, because you are pushed. You're like, I can't do this thing, so now I want to rebel and do the thing in whatever way I can possibly do it.
Yeah,
so
not physically social, but
yes,
Zoomly social.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that because I want to kind of end the podcast, and I just thought I'd end with some random thoughts to give the viewers and the listeners and some people some thoughts about the things. But that doesn't mean we have to think negatively about it. It means things can change. And also it does mean that we can think about, where we are in the world right now, what we can do to get better at communicating in different ways. Like
vocally.
Kind of Boots has done. Vocally, whether or not we're doing it in a game, and maybe treating each other a little tiny bit better than we have in the past, especially nowadays. Because, that's fucking needed, I think. But is there anything else you guys want to bring up about Path of Fire that we maybe haven't done that you thought would be a very, very interesting point, or is there anything you want us to end on specifically? Because I will mention something very, very quickly before we end as well.
Cool, yeah.
Okay, so
Along with Joko.
there you go. There is one thing to also think about as well. Very recently, And there might be devs in here who are on that game. And I just want to plant the seed in people's heads. Crucible was a very awesome game produced by many developers that were from Guild Wars 2. And probably not many people have spoken about this on the streams or even thought about it. Many people from ArenaNet went there. The game is, I'm literally about to go and play the last like community event that we're having, which is very, very sad. And if one thing to think about is, where are those people going? And that's all I'm going to say. People could be continuing to go on to stay on Amazon, go to New World, go to other games, go to other things. People may be leaving. They may be going back to ArenaNet. You never know. Because things of ArenaNet actually, I think, are probably in a better place than they've been for since Path of Fire. And I'm talking about the higher echelons of management here. Might be a little bit more contentious point to make. I'm not going to say anything more than that. But I feel like we may see some people come back. You may not see some people come back. And I'm kind of excited for the future of things, even though this thing's stopped. I don't know. I feel like there might be some change, and I don't know anything at all. Just FYI, I know fuck all. I know nothing. Zero.
It's philosophy right there.
That's not philosophy. That's
not knowing anything. Talking about it still.
But I'm going to continue to end the show. Okay. You guys don't want to talk about anything else, do you? Or do you?
Yeah, good. Path of Fire was a good expansion.
I don't know.
Sure.
I want to just really quickly transition into a discussion about the upcoming X-Pack, and I think we could probably wrap
Yeah, and the balance of the upcoming X-Pack.
Dragon.
I honestly, genuinely, would love to talk to you guys all day. I would just do a podcast all day, and we'd just have breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we would hang out, and we would just go off to the bathroom every so often, get out for a stretch. I would be up for a day podcast,
24-hour podcast.
I would be up.
Oh my
I
God.
would do a 20. Not a 20. I don't like promoting 24-hour casts anymore. But I'd do a solid 8-hour podcast and just talk about Guild Wars 2 and just maybe rotate people in and out, because people probably don't want to do that. Maybe they do. I don't know. But I could do that with you guys. I could do that easily. Happily, because I'm glad you came.
I'll do 20 minutes.
20 minutes? You just did 2 hours.
You must so tired.
I do. If it was an event, I'd do 8 hours. I mean, we could do it. I believe.
I'd do 8 hours. Yeah,
that'd be fun.
Yeah, maybe I'll think about it. Actually, could do it pre. That's an idea.
We have a giveaway, or some special thing announcement. I don't know.
Well, as soon as they give a little more information, I'm in.
That's true.
Or would you interview a developer or something? I don't know.
I've got to work on that one. That's a tough one. that's more difficult. We're gonna end. Okay. This has been the LightBringers podcast number 7, talking about Path of Fire. Guests have been Better Chest, Boots, and Kroof. Kroof, where do you do stuff? What is the address of it? And do you like things?
So I live on 541 Melrose Avenue.
Oh God.
No, but I do a lot of YouTube stuff. If you type in Kroof or Kroof Gaming, if the search engine still recognizes that, you can find me there. I'm also here on YouTube under not YouTube, Twitch under Kroof Gaming, and find me on social media. I have a Discord too. I post the memes. You'll enjoy them.
There we go. Thank you very much for coming on, legend.
Kroof means A+.
Boots, tell us your things. There you go.
Me?
Kroof.
Who?
Sorry. No, not wait. Boots. Oh. Sorry, I did. We did Kroof. Boots. Boots. Sorry. Go on.
Okay. I also YouTube. I do that thing with the World of Enders or Boots. You can probably find it. That's all. Thank you.
Google Boots Guild Wars 2 though, because otherwise that's weird.
Oh, really? I mean, I feel like you get the same experience if you just look at a nice pair of boots.
Are they leather? Are they rain boots?
Okay.
Yeah, some Wellingtons or...
Jesus. Bird of Jess. Where do you do the things?
Mostly Twitch. You can find me, twitch.tv, Bird of Chess. You can also find me now on YouTube, so Bird of Chess over there as well, Chess. It's because I go by the name Rook. It's a bit of a pun on being a bird and a chess piece. A lot of people go there expecting chess content. You will not find any. What you will find is Final Fantasy 14 and Guild Wars 2 content, alongside some other fun stuff, single players and other games that I love. So check that out. You can also find me on Twitter and Instagram at Bird of Chess.
When you said that single player thing, I thought it was like a dating website. I was like, and single players everywhere. We have like a Guild Wars single player website. Oh, there's probably is one.
Hot birds near you.
Single hot bird near you.
Chess is pretty big these days.
Because in England, a female is also called bird, right? I know culture.
No, gosh. Amazing. I love you guys and having you on here. Thank you so much for being part of this once again.
Thanks for having us.
Oh dear, I'm never doing this again. No, that's a lie. That's a lie. We're gonna end with just a little bit of music and then we're just gonna wind down, but I'm pretty much sure we're done. Thank you very much for watching. If you have enjoyed this content, I am Jebro. I'm lame at selling myself. Twitch.tv/JebroUnity. I am an MMO vet. I play a lot of different games. MMORPGs is pretty much something I specialize in, as well as doing podcasts, commentating on various different games. Guild Wars 2 PvP, Rocket League in the past, Crucible, Sadness, which is still going on for another month, commentating on Sundays wise, but other stuff in the future as well. Please come and join us. Check out the channel, twitch.tv/JebroUnity, youtube.com/JebroUnity. Very mental health focused and also thinking about all the things in terms of gaming, I guess, and life. Anyway, we're going now. Enjoy your life. I will see you. Thank you very much for watching. Think about actually going back and listening to previous podcasts about Guild Wars 2, Elder Scrolls Online, and even just my own thoughts, which I'm going to put out there in episodes very soon. These Guild Wars 2 podcasts are going to be coming a bit faster as well. Probably maybe a little bit more every 2 or 3 weeks rather than once a month. Bye-bye. Waving. See you later. Thanks for watching. Enjoy. See you soon. Bye-bye. Wave.